is my generation gonna be able to buy houses? I'm in my 20s. And the more I look at the real estate market around the world, I can't help but to think, how the hell is anyone in my generation supposed to buy a house in their future? I feel like so many foreign investors, big real estate firms, and people with a lot of money keep buying up houses in order to flip or rent it out. Is my generation just absolutely fucked and never be able to buy property? Unless you and your spouse have a high-paying jobs in noble professional careers like tech, health, finance, or law, how the hell are we gonna buy a home? Are we just fucked? I'm drafting up plans to build my first home out of avocado toast. That's the neat part. They won't. It's pretty simple. The birth rate in most countries in the West is very low, so as old people die, the number of buyers will be too low to maintain the house prices and they will drop. The problem is you'll have to wait 20 years for this to happen fully, the last boomers dying, and climate change could massively increase immigration, stopping the effect. At this point I plan on permanently staying at a Marriott hotel. Own nothing. Be happy. GIF GIFY YXQOAJFWUEETPVEVUO. LMAO. We won't. We may get lucky and inherit one from an older family member. As someone who makes $80,000 a year and pays $2,500 a month in rent, we can't. Houses in the middle of nowhere are pretty fucking cheap. GIF GIFY IHHDW1IRUVQJ1P5G89. Man. I ask myself that same question and shudder. I'd hate to be a young person facing the housing market now. The middle class is being completely gutted and those in power can't get it through their thick skulls that this is not sustainable. That's the neat part. You aren't. The powers that be want you to own nothing. You should probably kill them. At least figuratively. Don't worry. Redditors said the housing market would collapse last year. You're good. Wait for housing market to crash. It has to eventually be born into money. Cancel Netflix, stop buying coffee and stop eating avocados, or at least that's what they told my generation. Rent or live more rural for a while. Save up money. Reevaluate in a couple of years. Being two people helps a lot. Not unless all the boomers die. As the aging population begins to die off, there will be a surplus of houses which should drive the price down. Hope you have rich parents. Don't expect your first house to be the same as the one you moved out of parents. Start looking for starter houses. Yes, I know they are hard to find, but they do exist. I'm 48 and couldn't buy a house until I was 37. I had to wait out the entire late 90s 08 housing bubble. This ain't new, unfortunately. You'll own nothing. Be happy. I'm 27 and have owned 2 homes. I'm a mechanic. Home ownership hasn't changed significantly since 1961, the first time it was recorded. Don't look for homes in places like New York, LA, or Miami. Look in cheaper, smaller cities. Get a US job, work for a few years and move to a different country. Worked for me. I'm 24 and own a home near Tokyo, and buying the house and all the moving expenses was still cheaper than a house in the US. Stop blaming poor people for one. It's giant corporations like BlackRock that are the reason for the current crisis. We're not. Sorry, but the reality is most of won't be able to. It's absolutely saddening, but that's where we are. It doesn't take noble professional careers to make money. I work in a cockroach and rat-infested factory and make 6 digits a year because nobody wants to work in a place where cockroaches land on you as you avoid a rat the size of a football. It won't be one. That's the best part, we don't. That's the neat thing. You don't. I bought a tent. Your only hope is probably living with your parents rent-free or a modest rent split multiple ways. With roommates while living frugally with a $50K 100K year a job and doing nothing but putting money away for like 5-10 years. $25K 50K year. Invest it in an index fund. Use that as a hefty down payment on a house or buy it outright depending on what happens in the market around you. It won't be fun, but it can be done just being honest about what it would take. And yes, it sucks and shouldn't be this way. That's what I'd do if I could go back in time. Invest young, but everything as cheap as possible and get a profitable degree or learn a profitable trade. Live with your parents for as long as possible, and by your 30s to 40s you will probably be able to buy a house. If you are unable to do this, you're probably fucked. Where are you looking? There are low-cost living options out there. But of course these will not be in desirable locations. Are you really asking how will your generation be able to afford a nice house or just a house? You can if you live in somewhere cheap. A 3-room apartment is only $50,000 where I live. That is due to major oversupply from construction. People 30 and under are of concern for sure. Look at Hong Kong housing prices. It's legit impossible. Generational wealth. Or living in a dirt cheap place while you make more and save. I did that for 5 years. Lived in a basement apartment. Investments. Save, save, save. Stop expecting to live without having to commute for 1 to 3 hours a day. How do you think boomers bought cheap houses in the suburbs? There weren't suburbs to start. They drove an hour to 2 hours each way. Living 50 to 60 miles from work. In my 20s and own a house. It's not that difficult. I think people have bad ideas of what they should be able to afford. Should you be able to buy a 3-bed detached house as your first home? No. Don't have kids for a while. It is so much harder to buy a house when you have to buy one big enough for a family. Rent out your spare bedrooms. That'll help pay your mortgage. I bought my home just recently at 24 in Vancouver. 20 down payment without my family's help. It's durable, but I was in a lucky position. Complete overhaul of the current system. Or move to another country. The house price to salary ratio has not been this bad since the 19th century. Loser birth rates equal bigger inheritances. Guy the First No is the only child of an only child. Just inherited his down payment because his grandma died. So when society fails you, you can always root for death. Buying property is a choice and a luxury. Inheritance is my only option. I'm thinking we go back to basics. Reject mortgage. Build a cob house. The simple answer is we won't. Just give up the coffee and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm in my early 20s and I plan to never move out. Don't need to pay rent. I have a gigabit Ethernet connection and air conditioning, and I plan on never being in a relationship or having kids, so I don't really have any reason to move out.